Welcome back to my video series where I'm going through all the challenges in my book, The C# Player's Guide. Have been working through this final battle challenge, and there's 18 parts to it. There's only 4 left to do. We're getting close to the end here. And this week we're going to be doing this attack modifiers challenge. So in this one, the idea is that when there's an attack, the potentially the attacker and the defender have an opportunity to change the data about an attack. So, for example, if an attack is supposed to do 2 damage, an attack modifier for the defender may reduce that damage by 1, or cut it in half, or any of a number of other things that an attack modifier might do. Similarly, you could have an attack modifier by the attacker that could change the amount of damage it's doing by giving it a boost, or there's a lot of things that you could accomplish with this. So there's a lot of flexibility. Specifically, though, what we're going to be doing is we're going to build this infrastructure for attack modifiers. We're going to give characters the ability to have a defensive attack modifier. So this is applied when you're on the receiving end of an attack, and then we're going to add in a new character type, this stone amarok. And it's going to have a modifier with the name Stone Armor that will reduce every attack by 1. And that means an attack that only deals 1 damage is not going to have any impact on this. So like the punch that the character has isn't going to hurt it at all. And then there's a little bit more here about the attack that Stone Amarok has. It's got a bite attack as well and some stuff like that. So that's the idea, though, and that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to move this off my screen and we'll just dive in. So I think the first thing we're going to do, I think kind of like what we've done in the past when we've been introducing a new concept, is we've made like a gear.cs and a items.cs. Let's do a similar thing here for this and just make it, add a new item. And then we will call this attack modifiers.cs. And then this is going to generate a bunch of stuff in here that we don't actually care about. And then we need to define this notion of an attack modifier. And I think, to me, this is the kind of thing that sounds like it's basically a function. Really, that's kind of it. It's a thing that takes, there's attack data, let me go find that. Attack data coming in, and we're supposed to take this and produce new attack data that's modified, and it may do nothing, or it may increase the damage or decrease the damage. This is it's like sending this like object, this chunk of data, this record, through a pipeline, and the attacker could potentially have a chance to modify it on its way out. Maybe some of the gear could have a chance to modify it on its way out. The defender has a chance to modify it on its way in. Maybe some of the gear the defender has could modify it on its way in. So you could imagine adding in, especially given that we've already done gear, like you could imagine having this type of thing to have like equipment that has an attack modifier on it as well that could affect an attack. So you could have equipment that with it on you equipped, that it will reduce damage, or maybe it will increase the damage, or something like that. There's a lot of things that this could do. And actually, given that we have put this probability of success on our attack data, there's also here the possibility that we could affect the probability of success. Like we could have something that modifies attack data in a way where it cuts the probability of success in half. So anyway, that's the idea. And so in my mind, we have data coming in and we're just supposed to produce new attack data going out. So it's like same type of thing going in and out, but like based on what we're seeing there and anything else that this attack modifier might want to do, we'll make changes to it. So I think we actually could, given that it is a function, we could use a delegate, and something like let's see. I think that goes here. So like we could just do this. Like I said, it's a function that takes attack data as an input and returns attack data that might have modified it. But I don't think that would be a bad approach here. But I do wonder about. I think I'm going to go with an interface. Now, why am I going with an interface? I don't know. I don't know that there is a super compelling reason why I should, in this case, because it really only, well, I don't know. I guess I can think of one reason, and that's because it would be nice to also include not just the logic for like doing something, but also a name. So that's maybe about it. And I think we do want that because the description for this says stone armor reduced the attack by 1 point. So it would be nice to have that option. But anyway, that's the reason I'm going down this path. So in fact, speaking of that, let's just add in string name get, and then we'll add in attack data, modify attack data. So there's the interface. We do have this stone armor attack modifier. And then we just want this to, we'll just generate this here really quick, implement interface. The name is stone armor. And then what we'll do is we will return new attack data. So we'll just make new attack data that's from it, only we will subtract 1. That's all it needs to be. That could be enough. Let's talk through a couple of other variations here that we could use. This attack data is a record, so we could use a with statement. So we could just say return input with damage equal to input dot damage minus 1. The benefit of this, I mean, it's slightly shorter, right? The benefit of this is that if this thing gets more complicated, like we really do want to keep everything the same, except for we want to change one thing about it. This with expression will create exactly that. So if attack data ended up with more things to it, then then we don't have to modify this again, as opposed to if we added another parameter here, we would need to pass that along. So I think I like that better. With that, I think we can switch it to an expression body. So there, nice and simple. The other thing we might want to do here, though, is if the damage is, you know what, I'm gonna actually undo that. I'm gonna leave it as a block body, a statement body, for a moment. So because there's a couple of things that I want to do here. The first one is I think it might make sense to do math dot max 0 and input damage. So if we drop below 0, we don't actually go down below 0. So if an attack was going to deal 0 damage, then that's fine. The other thing, though, that we could do here is, let's move this up here to another line. And then, like, so somewhere in here, we do need to get in that stone armor, reduce the attack by 1 point. And we've had similar conversations in this before. One, like, should this guy be directly writing to the console window? It kind of feels like this isn't the kind of thing that should necessarily have to be writing to the console window, because it might be nice to be able to reuse some of this stuff in a game that's graphical. It's not the console based. So if that's the case, we might need to do something extra fancy to allow something else to be able to recognize how it changed and do that. But maybe right now, console.writeLine, stone armor reduced the attack by input.damage minus actual damage. And maybe what we want to do is int difference equals input.damage minus actual damage. We'll throw the difference in here. And then if difference is greater than 0, do that. So if we actually reduced it, then we'll say that. So yeah, if we were going to deal 0 damage, there wasn't anything that was going to happen, and we could just ignore it. But there. So stone armor. That is the first attack modifier that we've got, and I think that's all that's required for this. We do, however, need to go over to our characters, and we need to give characters the option for an attack modifier. And like I said, it's maybe 2, but we're only going to do 1. So public attack modifier, defensive modifier, get set. And like I said, we could come in here and do an offensive modifier as well. But I'm gonna allow this to be null. So that means we're gonna have to check it, because it might be null. Another possibility that we could do here is we could say, look, we're gonna demand that there are no null attack modifiers. And then over in here, we would have potentially a public class. This is a pattern called a null object, the null object pattern. So we could have like a null attack modifier. And in this case, this doesn't need, we can just call that none. And down here, we can just return input, So now we could say everybody must have there it goes. We could have just a single. So we could have this null attack modifier, which then would allow us over here in characters to say, by default, it can't be null. We are expecting to have something there, and we can just start it as a null attack modifier. So this is the null object pattern. So instead of allowing null, this is another possibility, is to give it an object that's kind of inert. It doesn't really do anything to speak of. And I think this accomplishes that. So I think this is a reasonable option here for us as an alternative. I don't think I fear null as much as some people do, and I think I'm fine with not demanding this, but just checking for null, especially with C sharp. Let's see, when did they add that? 5 had it. C sharp, or well, C sharp 9 .NET 5 had that, and 6 it's now on by default. So it'll, like, the compiler's going to tell us, if as long as we're doing everything right and we haven't turned that off, the compiler's going to tell us when we get it wrong or when we fail to check for null. So I'm okay allowing characters to have a null attack modifier. And then all these other characters here are by default going to, that'll be the default value. They'll have a null attack modifier. And now all we need to do is come in here and add public class. What was this thing called? It's a stone amarok. It's a character, and stone amarok. Its attack is bite, which we haven't defined yet. We'll define that in a second. And it has 4 HP. So let's go define public class bite. And let's see. So what does bite do? Bite, it deals 1 damage. Just a fixed 1 damage every time, which puts it in the same category as punch. It's just as dangerous as punch. It's in the same category as, nope, not bone crunch, the stab from a knife. So same thing, just a different name, but we've made a whole other class for it. I think I'm okay with that. I don't, I kind of, there's something that I like about, like, every one of these things is its own type, even though, and we've talked about this in these videos in the past as we've been making this, there's a lot of other ways we could have done it, and I think other people will have a preference for other things. In fact, me on a different day might have had a different preference too, but that's where we're at. So okay, so this guy has a standard attack called bite, and then the important thing here is this guy has, he has in here, we've got to give him defensive modifier equals new stone armor. So we make a new stone amarok, and it'll automatically be given this stone armor. And let's see, what does it say? So we're supposed to, so we've made our stone amarok character. Stone amaroks have 4 HP. It reduces all damage by 1 HP. We've already got that. This also has, if your hero still only has a 1-point punch attack, change something. We should be okay. All of our heroes have an attack that does more than 1 damage. But this means, for example, like Vin Fletcher has a punch attack. That's useless. And the quick shot from the bow that will deal 0 or 3, that's going to be reduced to 0 or 2. So a 50-50 chance of dealing only 2 damage or 0 damage after this is applied. So the one thing that we do need to handle here is we have to deal with the fact that we have to, like, resolve this attack modifier. And if we come here to this attack action, this right here is the part that's doing this. So we probably want to, we've generated the attack data, and we probably want to allow this to pass through. If we had the like if we had a character dot offensive modifier, we'd want to pass it through that. As it is, we can really just pass it through the defensive attack modifier. So the target dot defensive modifier. Let's do it this way. I had a thought there that we'll come back to. If target dot defensive modifier is not null, target dot so update the attack data equals target dot defense modifier attack data. sorry, there's a method to call here, dot modify. There. Now, I will say, in this case, had we stuck with that, like the null object thing where we had like a null defensive modifier, that it's not actually null, it's just an object that does nothing. In that case, it would just pass through. We would not have to do this. We could have just said, like, basically, we could have just had this line and just used it. As it stands, this is saying, look, that could be null, and that's because we said it might be null. But if we had a null object, we wouldn't have to do that here. We could just apply it. And furthermore, we also could have done well, this. So we can like fit it all in one fell swoop. In fact, and we could have done the same thing here, like target dot offensive modifier. And that doesn't exist, but like we could take the data, pass it through any offensive modifier, pass it through a defensive modifier, and whatever we end up with here is what it resolves to. And then we do this probability of success, and then we will deal the damage. But because of null, it definitely gets trickier. So honestly, that's a pretty compelling argument for wouldn't it be nice if we did have a null object in there? If we did have not a null reference, but an object that is a null object, something that is like that inert, it doesn't do anything, it passes through, nothing's going to happen if you use it, but it's, it'll ensure that you don't end up with, it's an object in place of what might have been null. Now here, we actually could do this in one line. We could do that. So now we will apply, if it's here, we'll use it. And if this, in this case, with a double question mark, the null coalescing operator, if this is null, or if this returns null, which it specifically says it doesn't. Like this is not this. It specifically says it doesn't return null. So in this case, but if supposing it did, then we would just use the original attack data. That is perhaps not quite as clean as if we had used a null object, but at the same time, calling into a method that literally does nothing and then returning is, I don't know, that's not fantastic either. So anyway, yeah, there's trade-offs. There's always trade-offs, and it's sometimes there's so many facets to these trade-offs that it's hard to just say, here's the rule, follow this rule, and you'll be good. Because it's complicated. But now we're applying our defensive modifier. And yeah, so that seems pretty good to me right there. And the only thing we're missing is somehow we have to add in, let's see, this says add a battle that includes 2 stone amaroks as monsters. So that would be maybe right here. Let's remove some of these potions. They do not, I don't even know that we want them to have potions, and I'm going to remove, you know what, I'm just going to let these guys have cake. Making changes on the fly here. These guys do not need any gear. Let's remove that. That dagger wouldn't help them anyway. Dagger's effectively the same attack as their bite attack is in terms of the amount of damage delivered. I just had a thought here, putting a cake in here, because I love the notion of the uncoded one eating cake at the middle of a battle. That's funny, so I'm doing it. Okay, let's see. I'm actually going to, let's scoot this up to the front. I'm scooting it up to the front so that I can actually see it play out right now, knowing that this really belongs later on. I did it again. I'm OG once again. Let's see. I think we can do. I can just let the computer run this. But I do want to stop it and see what it's doing. So, Stone Armor. Let's see. It's OG's turn. Use slash. Stone Armor reduce the attack by 1 HP. Slash dealt 1 damage. That's correct. That's what it should do. And then Vin Fletcher used Quick Shot, dealt 2 damage. It reduced it by 1. That's correct. I guess maybe I've just forgotten. I'm a little surprised to see that this dealt. In this case, there's 2, like both of them have been damaged. I thought the AI picked the first one, but I think the human controlled player must pick it always. Right now it always uses the first one, and I think the computer player picks it at random. So we're running computer players on both sides this time, so that's maybe not that surprise. Uh, so in this case, there's like we don't get any reduction here, even though it's yeah, because OG doesn't have that defensive modifier. And yeah, so looks like they beat it just fine. It didn't even take that much damage. I mean, these guys do have like this right here dealt 2 damage. That had to have been this guy here. Slash dealt 1 damage. Quick shot dealt 2 damage. This quick shot keeps landing. That's the main reason why this is working out so well for them is yeah. All right, well, I mean, it seems like now we're getting some misses. I feel like these guys didn't use potions as much as I kind of wish they had. I said the encoded one eating cake would be funny, but the encoded one can't eat cake if it's computer controlled because that computer AI doesn't consider cake. All right, I still love the idea. I'm not going to deal with it right now, but we'll give it 2 potions, no cake. Maybe we'll change that later. But the one thing I do want to do is come over to here and say we need to increase the chance of using those potions. It needs to be higher, 0.5. There we got a miss at least. Yeah, it's just a little disappointing that these things haven't been using their potions. I want them to use their potions. It's really that purple text that I'm looking for. Man. Yeah, that was the only potion. I'm kind of sad about that. One more time. There, used a potion. There, used another potion. Okay, there we go. All right. I do feel like at this point, and I feel like this unraveling attack, like we should make that. Let's make this at least 2 damage and up to 4 damage. I think we can definitely do that. And I think we can also take this guy and go up to at least as much HP as the human characters have. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's an improvement. See if we can get the human. I will say this is actually this is one of my favorite features in this is the ability to just like let this run. Everybody's using potions. Is the ability to just let the computer just run it, or let humans run both sides. I think that's kind of fun because you can just like see the game play out and just see how it goes. I could run the game 1,000 times pretty quickly and count up the number of wins for each team and see how balanced it is. So it's a fun little feature. At any rate, that I think is everything we need for this challenge for attack modifiers. Like I said, we've only added in defensive ones. We could add in offensive ones. That'd be really easy to do. But we've skipped it for now, and that's okay too. So I think that's it for this video, and I will see you guys next time.